Good afternoon. Happy holidays. Merry Christmas from all of us at Saints News Network. I'm John Hendricks here inside the Mercedes-Benz Superdome alongside Brendan Boylan. Brendan, Merry Christmas to you, first of all, man. Hope everything was good. Was Santa good to you today?
I think he was. I hope he was for you and your kids. The pictures I saw, it looked like you guys had a great time before you headed out to the Superdome. So Merry Christmas to you and yours and all the fans watching. Thanks for your support this season. We hope you had a Merry Christmas and maybe had a cool Saints gift or two under the tree waiting for you. Well, it looks like we lost John, but we have a great matchup for you guys here today inside of the Superdome, the Saints and Vikings. Obviously, Saints fans know that over the last 3 seasons, this has been quite the little rivalry between the Saints and the Vikings. 2 of the last 3 playoff trips for the Saints have ended in heartbreak at the hands of the team in purple and gold, but the Saints have a chance to knock them out of playoff contention today with a victory, and the New Orleans Saints another chance to clinch the NFC South title.
Yeah, sorry about that. I guess my phone got COVID for the second straight week or something. I don't know.
There you go.
With technology, man. So, look, you probably touched on it, but look, we're in week 16 already. I mean, goodness gracious, it's crazy. I mean, this season for me has felt like it's flown by. Obviously, like you said, Saints are in a position to wrap up the NFC South for the 3rd straight week. Minnesota comes to town. You know, Saints are. If this was the regular season, I mean the postseason, I'd have a little bit more concern. But this is the regular season. I mean, Drew Brees is 4-2 against the Vikings in his career with the Saints. What do you think? How does this play out today, Brennan?
Well, you know, I wrote it in an article this week is that the Saints have a chance to put some of those ghosts of Christmas past to rest. And remember, some of the greatest memories in Saints history come against the Minnesota Vikings, with Garrett Hartley knocking it through the uprights and sending the Saints to their first Super Bowl. But that seems like ages ago, and the Saints fans know how crazy this rivalry has been. You know, Minnesota, for a team that's sitting and on the outskirts looking in and more than likely probably not going to qualify for the playoffs this season, their offense has been pretty stellar. Adam Thielen, I think, is still one of the most underrated receivers in football. People in New Orleans know who Justin Jefferson is and what he did at LSU last year. And look at the company that he's in with the Minnesota Vikings, you know, with Randy Moss in terms of some of those rookie records that he's setting. Dalvin Cook is an Offensive Player of the Year candidate. And I think Kirk Cousins does enough for this team to be an effective quarterback. So offensively, they've been great. But defensively, there's been a lot of struggles. Today, they're missing a boatload of players. Defensively, there's a lot of questions on who is starting at linebacker for the Minnesota Vikings today. So this is a game for the Saints to really figure some things out. Obviously, last week, the offense looked extremely rusty despite putting 27 points up on the board. Drew Brees completed something around 45% of his passes, which is just unlike any Drew Brees from any time period in his NFL career. But the defense looks stellar, especially with them being on the field for almost 40 minutes, maybe a little bit over 40 minutes of that ball game. 92 offensive snaps for the Kansas City Chiefs. You had to double take when you looked at the box score. You said, man, this looks like a college football game. What do you mean 92 offensive snaps? But the defense held their own. They've continued to prove that this is a defense that could carry this team to the Super Bowl. But a depleted receiving core for the New Orleans Saints, they have a lot to prove. But against a Vikings defense that struggled this year and is not 100% healthy, they have a great opportunity to do that today.
Yeah, and it's going to be key. I mean, Vikings enter this game. They're 5th in the league in their yards per game. Dalvin Cook has a lot to do with that. 2nd in the NFL, only behind Derrick Henry as far as the leading rushers go. And look, New Orleans is entering this game banged up too, right? I mean, you don't have Traquan Smith. He goes on injured reserve on Thursday. Obviously, you get Marquez Callaway. That's going to be a big move back for the Saints. He's lined up as the number 2 receiver, and he's obviously punt return duties and kick return duties with the team waiving Tommy Lee Lewis. Defensively, you're not going to have Trey Hendrickson. That's a big loss for this team. He's got a stinger injury. Hopefully it's nothing serious, but we'll see if he returns next week, and just depends on how it plays out. Nick Easton's been out with a concussion. Andres Pete's out with an ankle injury. James Hurst has been rolled for him. And then Marcus Williams, obviously, having a great year, very underrated year that people aren't talking about much. He's out. TJ Williams played today. So all that aside, Brendan, I mean, you talked about what happened to Brees last week in the first half, and then second half, he was much better. But you're looking at a wide receiving core without Emmanuel Sanders. You're like, who are these guys, right? When you're watching it from a national perspective, is this enough for them to get it done today, or is this going to be a game where they have to lean more on the ground?
I think they do have to lean on the ground, but here's some things that I do like. You mentioned Marquez Callaway coming back, and remember before he was injured, he had a great game against the San Diego Chargers, had a big, or rather Los Angeles Chargers now, but a big standout game for him. He showed a lot of promise in the return game as well, with Harris missing some time this year. I think though he's a rookie, he's proven enough to Drew Brees that, hey, I can trust this guy. Let me look his way, take a little bit of pressure off Emmanuel Sanders. A guy that came up on the transaction wire for the Saints yesterday was Austin Carr, being signed to the active roster. I know in terms of career statistics, it's not really there for Austin Carr, but it's a guy who's been in the system long enough. And if you go back through some of those training camps, a guy that Drew Brees spoke pretty highly of in some of his early training camps with the New Orleans Saints. So there's enough there to where I feel that this week is not so much like last week where Drew was throwing the guys that maybe he had never really practiced with either because they were on the practice squad. So a little bit more chemistry in that receiving core. But one thing to note is that you look at Latavius Murray over the last 2 weeks, I don't think he's had 10 touches total over the last 2 weeks after a couple weeks there where he was breaking off a 100-yard performance and was really the bell cow for this offense. So Sean Payton was first to say it in the postgame press conference after Kansas City. He felt like they didn't run the ball effectively enough, even when they tried, and that was with Alvin Kamara averaging nearly 5 yards per carry. So I could see Murray get a little bit going, especially against his former team. But they're going to have to make some things easy for Drew because he admitted it himself. He's not 100%. He's getting there. Obviously, anything to this part of your body, especially on your throwing side, that's hard. You can't ignore the fact that there is some pain there. There's some things that feel maybe a little unnatural. You're going to have to make it a little bit easier for Drew. Biggest thing there is don't get behind the game early. Don't make Drew throw the ball as much as maybe he did last week. So expect the run game to be there. Expect a little bit more cohesion in the wide receiving core.
Yeah, for me, look, it's one of those things is you got to win this for early downs, and I think that's something you obviously emphasize every week. But they're entering this game. They were 1 of 11 on third down last week, and that can't happen today. I mean, you got to be able to put yourself in position to win first and second down. Put yourself in a position where you're facing third and short, 3rd and 5. We all know that it says every time. Look, if Peyton calls a play and it works, he's genius. But if it doesn't, he got too cute, right? And so I think he's going to have a good balance of attacks here. I think he's going to look at play calling a really good game here. But for me, look, running the ball is obviously good. It's going to be good to control the time of possession. I think with some of these key linebackers out for the Vikings, this is an area where you can get Murray more involved. You can get Kamara more involved in the passing game. Make it a little bit easier on Drew. And then obviously, look, I think tight ends can be huge for this one. Josh Hill was a guy who didn't play a lot last week. I think 7 snaps. And you find out, I mean, it just wasn't really part of the game plan last week. It wouldn't hurt, but that'll be something to watch. Austin Carr's obviously got good value as a run blocker. So, look, maybe they do run it a little bit more, obviously, than they did last week. But, I still think Drew's going to air it out a little bit, try to get rid of it quickly. We all know what happened in that playoff game last week. It's going to be a challenge like it always is. But, look, I think, obviously, New Orleans, they know what's at stake. We understand what happened last week against Kansas City. Eagles game is kind of inexcusable, if you will, but this can't be a third week where they drop this game. And look, Brendan, when you look at the big scheme of things, you may not catch Green Bay, but now you have to worry about keeping Seattle and Los Angeles off your heel, right?
Oh, absolutely. This is a team that could easily fall to fourth. Third. Nobody in that NFC East is going to be moving up, but it's a team that could go from potentially the top seed, the runaway top seed in the NFC, to falling to second or third and maybe getting a little bit tougher of a playoff matchup. There's a lot on the line here today. Obviously, I mentioned it while you were reconnecting, was this is just another opportunity for the Saints to clinch their 4th consecutive NFC South title. But the biggest thing, and we've said it over the years, and not just football, but any sport, is it's about the team that goes into the playoffs playing their absolute best football. And in a weird way, I look back against Kansas City and I say, yeah, the offense didn't play that great, but the defense did. I felt like there was a lot of positive takeaways from a loss against Kansas City, where you lose by 3 points to the defending Super Bowl champion, arguably the best team in football, and you really didn't play that well. And you didn't really play well in any phase of the game. So I think you can actually take that game as a positive, and if the Saints continue to progress and move forward and put their best foot forward over the next 2 weeks, maybe they are the hottest team going into the playoffs. But there's a lot on the line here today. The Saints haven't lost 3 consecutive games since 2016. So obviously, since this little run of NFC South titles, they haven't done that. And I think this is a big game for Drew as well. You know, a lot of people before the injury, the big conversation at the beginning of the year was what? Air yards. The guy had a noodle arm, quote unquote, can't throw it downfield anymore. He put together some really good weeks, though the yards weren't up in the 300s or anything, some really good weeks, and then he gets hurt. So now the narrative is, well, Drew's banged up, he's old, he's hurt, the noodle arm is back, what have you. This is a big week for Drew Brees to prove, hey, I'm still the leader of this team. I can still lead this team to a Super Bowl. And this is still one of the best opportunities that the New Orleans Saints are going to have in their history to go get ring number 2.
Yep. And Jared Cook said it the other week. He's like, hey, look, you want to be playing your best football in December, to echo your point. So the Saints are simply going to have to do that. Now, defensively, while we look at that for a second, you know, obviously no Trey Hendrickson, sack leader, tied with Aaron Donald. That's something. He's going to get paid so much. I mean, and he's getting out-snapped by Donald by over 200-something snaps. But look, so you got Davenport opposite of Cam Jordan. Carl Grandison is going to rotate him. No Marcus Williams, so maybe some concerns on the deep ball. What are you expecting out of this Saints defense? I mean, not having Malcolm Brown again is huge, because we know what Dalvin Cook is capable of. But, you know, how do you see this one playing out for the defense?
I think they're going to have to make it one-dimensional. I think you said it best with Cook and being just an electrifying running back, and another guy out of that 2017 draft class with Alvin Kamara, 2 guys from that draft class that have just exceeded the high expectations that they already had, right? But stopping Dalvin Cook and trying to make them as one-dimensional as possible, getting them into third and long situations. I mentioned that this is a really underrated offense, and I think Kirk Cousins has been an underrated quarterback for majority of his career, but getting yourself in situations where Cousins is going to have to push the ball downfield, you got a lot of trust in your 2 guys on the outside, right? In Lattimore and Jenkins, and I think C.J. Gardner-Johnson is a guy that is not being talked about enough in the stellar season that he has had for the New Orleans Saints in pass coverage, particularly along with that run support. So I think you have to trust those guys, and you have to bet that Kirk Cousins isn't going to beat you, but Dalvin Cook very well could. And you look at his numbers in his 2 career games against the New Orleans Saints, Cook has torn up the New Orleans Saints defense. You go back to his NFL debut, over 120 yards in the playoff loss last season, close to 100 yards at 94 and a couple scores. I mean, this kid is the real deal. You're going to have to make Kirk Cousins beat you.
Yep, and I think that's absolutely the right thing. So what's at stake? Saints win. They're 4-time NFC South champions. They can eliminate the Vikings from the playoffs today, and, you know, you got to keep Tampa off your heels too. How's this play out? Who's going to win and why, Brendan?
I think it's going to be pretty tight. I think anytime you put any type of athlete in prime time, especially on Christmas Day and in the NFL, you don't get a lot of opportunities to do that. So it's a special day for a lot of these guys. So I expect their very best, and especially with the Vikings who are going, and they know as well as we do, the analysts, that if they don't win today, they're out of playoff contention, as well as the Saints know this is the 3rd consecutive week that they could clinch the NFC South title. And those fans and the Who Dat Nation have been waiting for that to become officially official. So I think we're going to get the best out of both teams. I think it's going to be 28-24 in favor of New Orleans. I think the defense gives up just a little bit, and maybe Justin Jefferson does get behind the defense for a deep ball and scores back in Louisiana in the Superdome, where he's had some great moments in his career already. So that's the way I see it going. I think Alvin Kamara has quite a game for New Orleans. I also expect Latavius Murray to get some things going, but I still don't think this offense, even after this week, is going to be on all cylinders like they'd like to be.
Yeah, look, you're giving people a Christmas heart attack. I think I'll take a little bit more difference. I think the Saints figured it out offensively. I think that they're going to limit the Vikings a little bit. Again, I still think it's kind of close. I don't think it will be 4-point claim close. I think the Saints are going to score over 30 this year, or this game. I'm going to take them 34-24 over the Vikings. They're going to be pretty much well in hand by the 4th quarter. So That's how at least I see it playing out. I think Drew's going to come back. They're going to put out some of their best game that they played in a while, and I just feel like they've got the energy again, like last week. And this is a Vikings team just not as good as they were before. So look, I'm going to take New Orleans, and I think they'll be able to wrap this thing up. And I just hope, because you don't want to come down to next week and after see what happens against next, on Sunday with everything, or Saturday, because they got Saturday games too. So, gang, please be sure to tune into our halftime report with Kyle T. Mosley and Bob Rose. Check out all our information on Saints News or Saints.media, and definitely keep up with us during the game. We'd love to interact with you. On behalf of Brendan Boylan, I'm John Hendricks. Have a good one and enjoy the game.